Break time equals 700 ms/. It is the night of June 23, 1812. On the banks of a river called the Neman, at the western edge of the Russian Empire, 600,000 men are waiting in the darkness. It is the largest army the world has ever seen. Frenchmen, Poles, Germans, Italians, Dutchmen, 20 nations marching under one man, the master of Europe. Fewer than half of them are actually French. It is not so much an army as an empire on the move, 400 kilometers of columns, 1,000 cannon, wagon trains stretching back over the horizon, driving 200,000 horses and enough cattle to feed a city. By morning, the engineers will throw 3 pontoon bridges across the water, and for 3 days and nights the columns will pour over them without a break. Their commander has promised them a short war. 20 days, he says. One great battle, and it will be over. Break time equals 700 ms/. Now hold that image. Because 129 years later, almost to the same week of the same month, 3,800,000 men are waiting in the darkness on the banks of another river, a few hundred kilometers to the south. It is the largest invasion force ever assembled in human history. Its commander has also promised a short war. 8 weeks, 10 at most. Kick in the door, he says, and the whole rotten structure will come crashing down. Break time equals 700 ms/. 2 armies. 2 centuries. The same river country. The same road east. The same target, a city called Moscow. And the same ending. Neither army came back. Both empires bled to death on the same plains, in the same mud, in the same snow, and here is the part that should keep you up at night: the second man knew everything about the first. He had read the books. He knew the story of 1812 in detail. He did it anyway. Break time equals 700 ms/. This is not a story about bad luck, or about winter, or about Russia. This is the story of a pattern, a trap built into the nature of power itself. It has destroyed conquerors for 300 years, and it has a strange property: knowing about it does not protect you. By the end of this video, you will see the pattern hold. And you will understand why the most powerful man in Europe walks into it, again and again, 129 years apart, mistake for mistake, almost to the day. Break time equals 700 ms/. In the spring of 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte is 42 years old, and he has never truly lost. Look at the map of Europe in that year. France swollen far beyond its borders. Spain occupied. Italy ruled by his relatives. Austria and Prussia, humiliated, disarmed, forced into alliance. In 15 years he has fought nearly every power on the continent, and he has beaten them all. Kings wait in his anterooms. An entire generation of Europeans has grown up unable to remember a world where his name did not dominate every newspaper, every treaty, every nightmare of every general staff. Break time equals 700 ms/. Only 2 powers remain outside his grip. England, safe behind its navy and its channel. And Russia, vast, slow, unreadable, stretching away to the east like a question nobody had ever answered. Napoleon does not particularly want to destroy Russia. He wants to force it back into his economic war against England, the continental blockade that Tsar Alexander has quietly stopped obeying. He believes one sharp, massive blow will do it. Cross the border, smash the Russian army in a single great battle near the frontier, dictate terms. Home by autumn. Break time equals 700 ms/. 20 days. Remember that number. And here is a detail that most retellings skip: because it makes the story stranger. 5 years earlier, these two emperors had been friends. In 1807, after crushing the Russian army at Friedland, Napoleon met Alexander on a raft anchored in the middle of another river, the Neman. The same river he would one day cross with the largest army on earth. The two men embraced. They divided Europe between them on paper, toasted each other at banquets, exchanged letters full of affection for years. My friend, my brother, the Emperor of the North. Break time equals 700 ms/. The invasion of 1812 was not a war between old enemies. It was the collapse of an alliance between two powers that had promised to share the world, and found the world too small for both of them. Keep that in mind. You are about to hear it again. Now slide forward 129 years. In the spring of 1941, Adolf Hitler is 52 years old, and he has never truly lost. Poland fell in 5 weeks. Norway and Denmark in 2 months. Holland in 5 days. Belgium in 18. And France, the great military power of the age, the country that had bled Germany white for 4 years in the First World War, France collapsed in 6 weeks. Break time equals 700 ms/. Look at the map of Europe in that year. It is the same map. From the Atlantic coast to the Polish plains, one man's will runs everything. Austria absorbed. Czechoslovakia dismembered. The Balkans falling into line. An entire generation of Europeans is learning to live in a world where his name dominates every newspaper, every treaty, every nightmare of every general staff. Only two powers remain outside his grip. England, safe behind its navy and its channel. And Russia. Break time equals 700 ms/. And Russia is not, on paper, his enemy. Less than 2 years earlier, in August 1939, German and Soviet ministers had signed a pact in Moscow, a treaty of non-aggression, with a secret map attached, dividing Eastern Europe between the two powers. They had toasted each other with champagne. Stalin had raised his glass to Hitler's health. German trains loaded with Soviet grain and oil were still rolling west, on schedule, feeding the German war machine, right up to the night of the invasion itself. Break time equals 700 ms/. Two powers that had promised to share the world, and found the world too small for both of them. The raft on the Neman, again, this time with typewriters. In December 1940, Hitler signs Directive No. 21, codename Barbarossa. The planning is so secret that Soviet intelligence warnings pile up on Stalin's desk, and he refuses to believe a single one of them. On the last evening of peace, a German deserter swims a river to warn the Red Army that the attack comes at dawn. Stalin's officers wire Moscow for instructions. The answer comes back: do not respond to provocations. Break time equals 700 ms/. The echo is not approximate. It is exact. Same position, master of the continent. Same unfinished enemy across the water. Same conclusion, England cannot be reached, so the path to final victory runs east. Same conviction that the Eastern Colossus is rotten, backward, ready to fall at one hard push. Napoleon gave himself 20 days. Hitler gave himself 8 to 10 weeks. Both men planned a war with no winter clothing, because both men planned a war that would be over before winter. Break time equals 700 ms/. Two of the most capable military minds of their centuries, at the absolute peak of their power, made the same bet, that Russia was a short war. Why? What made two men, so different in every other way, read the same map and reach the same wrong answer? To understand that, you have to see the war from the other side. Because Russia had a weapon that never appeared in any parade, and it is the reason both invasions were doomed before the first shot was fired. Break time equals 700 ms /. Here is a number that no conqueror ever fully absorbed until it was too late. From the Neman River, where Napoleon crossed, to Moscow is roughly 950 kilometers. From the 1941 German start lines to Moscow, about 1,000. And Moscow is not even the end of Russia. It is barely the beginning. Behind Moscow the land keeps going, and going, for another 7,000 kilometers. Break time equals 700 ms /. Every other country Napoleon had invaded worked like a chessboard: take the capital, checkmate, the enemy signs. Prussia collapsed when he took Berlin. Austria sued for peace when he took Vienna. Western Europe was dense: cities, roads, granaries, everything close together. An army could live off the land it conquered, and the land always ended somewhere. Russia did not play chess. Russia played something older. In 1812, the Russian war minister, Barclay de Tolly, does something that makes half his own officer corps accuse him of treason. Napoleon lunges across the border hunting for his one great battle, and Barclay refuses to give it to him. He retreats. And retreats. And retreats again. Week after week, the Russian armies slip away eastward, burning the crops behind them, emptying the villages, pulling Napoleon deeper and deeper into a country that offers his 600,000 men nothing to eat. The price Barclay pays for being right is his career. Russian society howls for a stand-and-fight general, officers snub him at his own headquarters. There are whispers that the foreign-sounding minister is selling Russia to Bonaparte. In August, the Tsar bows to the pressure and hands command to old Mikhail Kutuzov, one-eyed, 66 years old, beloved by the troops. And Kutuzov, the fighting general brought in to stop the retreat, takes one look at the board, and keeps retreating. The strategy survives the man. That is how you know it was never an accident. Break time equals 700 ms /. This was not cowardice. It was arithmetic. Tsar Alexander had said it out loud, before the war even began, to Napoleon's own ambassador: our climate and our space will fight for us. If it comes to it, he said, I will retreat to Kamchatka rather than sign away my empire. Napoleon heard those words. He filed them away as bluster. In August, at Smolensk, the first great Russian city on the road, Napoleon finally catches part of the Russian army and forces a battle. 2 days of brutal street fighting. And then, in the night, the Russians do the unthinkable again: they set their own city on fire and march out of it, leaving him a smoking shell. One of Napoleon's own officers watches Smolensk burn and writes in his diary that it was the most terrible and magnificent sight of his life, and that for the first time, he felt the war was cursed. An advisor urges Napoleon to stop there. Winter quarters at Smolensk, resume in spring. He refuses. Moscow is only 400 kilometers away. One more push. The Russians must stand and fight for their ancient capital, and then, the one good battle, and peace. The army marches on, deeper into the funnel. Break time equals 700 ms /. 129 years later, the Soviet Union runs the same play, industrialized. As the German panzer groups tear eastward in the summer of 1941, the Soviets begin the largest industrial evacuation in human history. 1,500 factories, entire plants, machine by machine, worker by worker, are loaded onto trains and shipped east beyond the Ural Mountains, out of reach of any German bomber. What cannot be moved is burned. Crops, bridges, rail depots, power stations. Stalin's order in July 1941 uses words Barclay would have recognized instantly: leave the enemy not a kilogram of grain, not a liter of fuel. Break time equals 700 ms /. The Germans win battle after battle that summer. They take prisoners in numbers no war had ever seen, hundreds of thousands at Minsk, at Smolensk, at Kiev. On paper, the Red Army is being annihilated. And yet every week, the front is somehow still there, further east, rebuilt, refilled with men from provinces the Germans had never heard of. The Wehrmacht is winning every engagement and losing the only measurement that matters, distance versus time. And in August 1941, at the same Smolensk where Napoleon had hesitated, the German high command faces the same fork in the road. The generals want to drive straight for Moscow, now, while the summer lasts. Hitler overrules them. He turns Guderian's panzer group south, toward Kiev and the grain of Ukraine. The Kiev encirclement becomes the largest battle of annihilation in history, 660,000 Soviet prisoners in a single pocket. A staggering victory. It also costs the drive on Moscow 5 irreplaceable weeks. When the panzers finally turn back north, it is October. In 1812, the road from Smolensk to Moscow took Napoleon into September. In 1941, the same stretch of the same road will now be traveled in the same season, with the same thing waiting at the end of it. Behind the front, something else is stirring that no German planner had budgeted for. Partisans. By autumn, they are burning supply depots and tearing up rail lines across the occupied rear, thousands of small wounds in the same supply arteries that were already too long. In 1812, Cossacks and peasant bands had done precisely this to Napoleon's couriers and forage parties. The land does not only retreat. It bites. Break time equals 700 ms /. That is the Russian trade, and it is the answer to our second question. Space for time. Land for blood. You may take 1,000 kilometers of it, Russia has 7,000 more, and every kilometer you advance is a kilometer added to your supply lines and subtracted from ours. Both invaders thought they were hunting the Russian army. In both centuries, the land itself was hunting them. Break time equals 700 ms /. And the trap was already closing, because of a number so mundane, so unglamorous, that neither emperor had bothered to look at it closely. It was not a general or a fortress that broke both invasions. It was a food bill. Break time equals 700 ms /. Every war runs on a hidden equation, how much an army eats, times how far the food has to travel. In 1812, the engine of every army in the world is the horse. The horse pulls the cannon, the ammunition, the bread wagons, the ambulances. Napoleon crosses the Neman with roughly 200,000 of them. And here is the equation that kills the Grande Armée. A horse eats about 10 kilograms of fodder a day. The wagons carrying that fodder are pulled by other horses, who are also eating 10 kilograms a day. Push the supply line past a few hundred kilometers, and the horses hauling the food are eating the food faster than they can deliver it. Break time equals 700 ms /. The mathematics has a hard edge, and the edge sits at roughly 500 kilometers. Beyond that line, in that century, on those roads, a horse-drawn army cannot feed itself from its base. It must live off the land. And the land, as we know, was burning. The land announces the rules almost immediately. For days after the crossing, in the last week of June 1812, a freak storm breaks over the army, hours of black skies, ice-cold rain and hail in the middle of summer. When it passes, the roads are swamps and roughly 10,000 horses are dead. 10,000, before the army has fought anyone at all. Then comes the heat, and the dust, and the thing the soldiers cannot see, typhus. It travels in the lice, and the lice travel in the packed, filthy bivouacs of 600,000 men sleeping in the open. Within weeks, the fever is killing more soldiers every single day than any battle of the campaign. The Grande Armée burns down like a candle, from the inside, in perfect summer weather. The result arrives with terrifying speed. In the first 8 weeks, in high summer, before a single snowflake, Napoleon loses tens of thousands of horses to hunger, exhaustion and heat. Men fall out by the thousands, dysentery, typhus carried by lice through the packed bivouacs, starvation. By the time the Grande Armée reaches Smolensk in August, still 500 kilometers from Moscow, it has already lost a third of its strength without fighting its great battle. Break time equals 700 ms /. Remember that. The legend says winter destroyed Napoleon. The ledger says the army was already dying in July. Now, 1941. Surely the machine age has repealed the arithmetic. The Wehrmacht has tanks, trucks, railways, aircraft. Look closer. Of the German divisions that crossed the border in June 1941, only a fraction are fully motorized. The rest march on foot, and their supplies roll behind them in wagons pulled by 600,000 horses. The most modern army on earth is, under the paint, still Napoleon's army. Break time equals 700 ms /. And the machines have appetites of their own. A panzer group drinks fuel by the trainload, and Russian railways run on a different gauge than German ones, so every ton of fuel and ammunition must be unloaded at the border and reloaded onto trucks. The trucks burn fuel to carry fuel. Push the line past 500 kilometers, and the trucks are drinking the cargo. The same equation. The same number. 129 years of technology, and the killing distance has not moved. Then, in October, the autumn rains arrive, the Rasputitsa, the season when Russian dirt roads dissolve into a sea of glue. Trucks sink to their axles. Horses die in harness by the tens of thousands, just as they had in 1812. For 3 critical weeks, the German advance on Moscow does not fight its way forward. It wades, at walking pace, while the temperature begins to fall. Break time equals 700 ms /. Decades after 1812, a French engineer named Charles Minard drew what many still call the greatest statistical graphic ever made, a single flowing line tracing Napoleon's army across Russia. It leaves the Neman as a thick band, 422,000 men wide. It arrives at Moscow as a thread. It comes back as almost nothing. No commentary, no drama, just a line, getting thinner with every kilometer of longitude. Break time equals 700 ms /. That line is what 500 kilometers of arithmetic looks like when it is finished with an army. Both armies crossed the border believing their strength was measured in men and guns. It was measured in kilograms and kilometers. And by the autumn, in both centuries, the equation had already delivered its verdict. The terrifying thing is that the verdict was available in advance. In both centuries, someone did the math beforehand, wrote it down, and handed it to the emperor. What happened to those warnings is the darkest echo of them all. Break time equals 700 ms /. His name was Armand de Caulaincourt, and he knew Russia better than any man in France. He had spent 4 years as Napoleon's ambassador in St. Petersburg. He had ridden the distances, felt the winters, listened to the Tsar. And in the summer of 1811, almost exactly a year before the invasion, Caulaincourt spent 5 hours alone with Napoleon, begging him not to go. He told him precisely what would happen. The Russians will not give you your great battle at the border. They will retreat into the interior. Your supply lines will stretch and snap. The country will be stripped bare ahead of you. And behind it all waits an enemy no army can fight, the climate. He repeated the Tsar's own warning about retreating to Kamchatka, word for word. Break time equals 700 ms /. Napoleon listened to all of it. And then he smiled, and said the words that should be carved above the ruins of every empire. One good battle. The Russians were a colossus with feet of clay, push, and it topples. The finest strategic mind of his age had heard an exact prophecy of his own destruction, and heard nothing. Caulaincourt did not give up. He raised it again, later, and received an answer that tells you everything about how empires die. Napoleon told him he was too old, that he had breathed the air of St. Petersburg too long, that he had become more Russian than French. The messenger was attacked, so the message could be ignored. Caulaincourt asked to be relieved of his post rather than take part in the war. Napoleon refused that too. He would keep the prophet of the disaster at his side, all the way to Moscow and back. Break time equals 700 ms /. 129 years later, the warnings are typed on official paper. In December 1940, 6 months before the invasion, the German General Staff wargames Operation Barbarossa on paper. The officer running the exercise is Friedrich Paulus, the same Paulus who will later surrender a frozen army at Stalingrad. His war game reaches a cold conclusion: if the Red Army is not annihilated within 500 kilometers of the border, the Wehrmacht supply system cannot sustain a drive to Moscow. That same winter, General George Thomas, the Army's chief economist, submits reports showing Germany does not have the fuel reserves for a long eastern campaign. The quartermaster staff calculates that the trucks can support the army for exactly 500 kilometers. Break time equals 700 ms /. 500 kilometers. The number from Napoleon's dead horses, now stamped and filed in a Berlin ministry. And Hitler's answer, to his generals, in the spring of 1941. A colossus with feet of clay. The same metaphor. Almost the same sentence, in a different language, a century and a quarter apart. And the German army itself believed it, for exactly 6 weeks. In early July 1941, the chief of the General Staff, Franz Halder, writes in his war diary that the campaign has essentially been won already. 1 month later, the same man, the same diary, a very different sentence: at the start of this war, we reckoned with about 200 enemy divisions. We have already counted 360. The Colossus, he admits, had been underestimated. Break time equals 700 ms /. The door had been kicked in. The structure was not collapsing. And it was already too late to stop pushing. And this is the moment the pattern shows its true face. Because the mystery was never a lack of information. Napoleon had Caulaincourt. Hitler had Paulus, and Thomas, and the quartermasters, and Hitler had something Napoleon never had. He had the complete written history of 1812. He knew how this exact movie ended. His own generals discussed Napoleon's campaign openly while planning their own. The books were on the shelves. Break time equals 700 ms /. So why? Why does the warning never work? Because by 1812, and by 1941, both men lived at the center of empires that had stopped saying no to them. 15 years of victories had turned every doubter into a flatterer or a fired man. Power had burned away the machinery of doubt. When you have been right against all advice 10 times in a row, the 11th warning does not sound like wisdom. It sounds like weakness. And so, in both centuries, the greatest army of the age marches east in the last week of June, carrying no winter clothing, toward a city that will not surrender. What happens to it there is the cruelest rhyme in military history. Break time equals 700 ms / September 7, 1812. A village called Borodino, 120 kilometers west of Moscow. The Russians finally turn and stand, and Napoleon gets the great battle he has chased for 11 weeks. It is the bloodiest single day of warfare the world has yet seen. 70,000 men fall, killed or wounded, in roughly 10 hours, a casualty every half second, from sunrise to mid-afternoon. The Russian center is a low hill crowned with earthworks that will change hands over and over through the day, piled so deep with bodies that attacking cavalry cannot keep formation over them. And at the crisis of the battle, with the Russian line finally wavering, Napoleon's marshals beg him to send in the Imperial Guard, his untouched elite, the hammer blow that has finished every battle of his career. He refuses. 800 leagues from France, he says, I will not destroy my last reserve. The one battle he had crossed a continent to fight, and at its climax, the gambler would not push in his last chips. The Russians are battered, but they do not break. In the night, they slip away east once more, past Moscow, still in being, still an army. Break time equals 700 ms /. 1 week later, Napoleon rides through the gates of Moscow expecting the ritual he has seen in Berlin and Vienna, city fathers, keys on a cushion, a signed peace. The city is empty. 270,000 people lived here. Nearly all of them are gone. The soldiers wander through a silent metropolis of palaces and locked churches, boots echoing in streets built for crowds. Veterans write home that it feels less like a conquest than a trespass, as if the city itself were waiting for them to leave. That night, fires begin, set, in large part, by the Russians themselves. The city's own governor has ordered the fire pumps removed or destroyed. The wind rises. For 4 days Moscow burns, a firestorm so vast that men read letters by its light in camps kilometers away. Napoleon has to be evacuated from the Kremlin through burning streets, shielded by his own guards from the heat. When it is over, 2/3 of the city is ash. He stares at the ruin and says, to no one in particular, these are Scythians. They burn their own holy city to spite me. He had crossed 1,000 kilometers to seize the prize. The prize had been soaked in oil and handed to him lit. Break time equals 700 ms /. He has taken the capital. He has won every major engagement. And he waits, for the peace offer that must surely come. He waits 1 week. 2. He writes personally to Alexander. No answer. 3 weeks. 4. The first frosts arrive. 5 weeks. Silence. He is master of a burned, empty city at the far end of a 1,000-kilometer supply line that is dissolving behind him, and somewhere east, the Russian army is growing stronger while his own melts at the rate of a regiment a day. On October 19, Napoleon gives the only order left. Retreat. He has waited exactly long enough to hand his army to the Russian winter. Break time equals 700 ms /. Now watch it happen again, frame for frame. October 1941. Operation Typhoon, the final German drive on Moscow. It opens in triumph, like everything else. At Vyazma and Bryansk the Wehrmacht encircles and captures 660,000 Soviet soldiers in 3 weeks. The road to the capital seems open. In Berlin, the press office announces that the war in the east is decided. Then the rains come, and the mud. Then the mud freezes, and the temperature keeps falling. In the middle of November, the senior staff officers of the Eastern armies gather in a town called Orsha to decide, dig in for winter, or make one last lunge at Moscow. The quartermasters report that supplies are collapsing. The field commanders describe divisions at half strength. And the answer that comes down is the answer Napoleon gave at Smolensk, in almost the same longitude, in the same month of a different century. One more push. The enemy must be at the end of his strength. The city is so close. Break time equals 700 ms /. What the German command does not know, the enemy is not at the end of his strength. A Soviet spy in Tokyo, Richard Sorg, has told Moscow that Japan will strike south against the Pacific powers, not north into Siberia. Stalin believes him. And so, through October and November, fresh Siberian divisions, winter-trained, winter-equipped, tens of thousands of men in white quilted suits, are quietly boarding trains for the West, while the exhausted Wehrmacht convinces itself that the Red Army has no reserves left. The last act is already loaded. The Germans simply cannot see it through the snow. The Wehrmacht is fighting in summer uniforms. The winter clothing exists, sitting in depots in Poland, because the railways can barely move fuel and ammunition, let alone overcoats, and because issuing winter gear would have meant admitting the 8-week war was a fantasy. In November the thermometer drops through -20, then toward -35. Weapons freeze solid. Tank engines must be kept running all night or lit with open fires in the morning. Frostbite casualties overtake combat casualties. Break time equals 700 ms /. By the first days of December, German patrols stand roughly 20 to 30 kilometers from Moscow. Some officers will swear they saw the city's towers through field glasses. It is the high water mark of the entire Nazi Empire. They are one tram ride from the Kremlin, and they cannot move another meter. And here, at the gates of Moscow, our first question finally answers itself. Why did Hitler, knowing everything about 1812, believe it could not happen to him? Because he believed the tank had abolished distance, the railway had abolished hunger, and his own will had abolished history. Napoleon believed one great battle rewrote all rules, Hitler believed the machine did. Each man was certain that this time was different. Break time equals 700 ms /. That certainty, this time is different, is not a defense against the trap. It is the trap. Because the moment you believe the old rules no longer apply to you, you stop checking the arithmetic. And the arithmetic never stops checking you. Break time equals 700 ms /. Now come the two dates that this entire story has been walking toward. The retreat from Moscow begins in October sunshine and becomes, within 3 weeks, one of the darkest ordeals in military history. The army marches back along the same road it came by, the road it had itself stripped bare in the summer. There is nothing left to eat on either side of it. Then the temperature falls off a cliff, -20, -30, on some nights lower. Men learn to read death at a glance, the comrade who sits down for a moment's rest, and whose eyes glaze as the cold takes him mid-sentence. At the end of November, the army reaches the Berezina River to find the bridges gone and 2 Russian armies converging. Dutch engineers stand chest-deep in the ice-choked water, building 2 trestle bridges by hand, most of them will not survive the week. For 3 days the wreck of the Grande Armée fights its way across under artillery fire. When the bridges are finally burned behind them, tens of thousands of stragglers are still on the wrong side. The river name enters the French language as a word for total catastrophe. Break time equals 700 ms /. December 5, 1812. A crossroads village called Smorgony, in the middle of the frozen ruin of the retreat. Of the 600,000 who crossed the Neman in June, fewer than 100,000 are still with the colors, and of those, perhaps 30,000 can still be called soldiers. On this day, December 5, Napoleon calls his marshals together, hands the command to Murat, climbs into a closed sleigh, and leaves. He races west across Europe, ahead of the news of his own catastrophe, to raise a new army in Paris. Break time equals 700 ms /. And history arranges one last, exquisite irony. The man sitting beside Napoleon in that sleigh, for 13 days and nights across the whole width of Europe, is Armand de Caulaincourt, the ambassador who had begged him not to go. The emperor talks almost the entire way, unburdening himself to the one man who had seen it all coming. At one point he even laughs, and wonders aloud what the English newspapers will say. The prophet got his answer. He got it in a sleigh, fleeing the prophecy. Behind him, his men keep dying in the snow. A sergeant named Bourgogne, who survived and wrote it all down, remembered soldiers fighting over the warmth of a dying horse, and men who simply sat down at the roadside, looked at the sky, and stopped. December 5, 1941. The same date. 129 years later, to the day. Outside Moscow, at dawn, in -30 degrees, the Red Army rises out of the snow. Georgy Zhukov launches the counteroffensive, with fresh divisions railed in from Siberia, men equipped and trained for exactly this cold, invisible until this moment because the Wehrmacht was certain the Red Army had nothing left. Within days, the German front west of Moscow is bending, then breaking. The army that was one tram ride from the Kremlin is thrown back 100, in places 250 kilometers, abandoning its frozen guns where they stand. Break time equals 700 ms /. Blitzkrieg, the entire German theory of the short war, dies in the snow west of Moscow on the same calendar day that Napoleon abandoned the corpse of his own short war. Break time equals 700 ms /. And the aftershocks rhyme too. Within weeks, the German army eats its own leadership. The commander-in-chief of the army, von Brauchitsch, dismissed. Guderian, the father of the Panzer Arm, sacked for retreating without permission. Hoepner, stripped of his rank. Dozens of generals removed in a single winter. And into the vacancy at the top of the German army steps a new commander-in-chief, appointing himself, Adolf Hitler, personally. From this point on, the man who refused every warning will hold the levers directly, and there will be no one left between his certainty and his armies. Napoleon, at least, had fled toward Paris to rebuild. Hitler builds himself a smaller room, with better mirrors. 2 empires. 2 invincible commanders. 2 invasions launched in the last week of June, promised to be over by autumn, dead by the 5th of December. That is not fate. Nothing mystical happened here. It is simply what the same inputs produce when you run them twice, the same overconfidence, aimed at the same space, governed by the same arithmetic, ending on the same page of the calendar. History did not repeat itself. The equation did. Break time equals 700 ms /. Pull back far enough, and the 2 stories fuse into one shape. A continental empire at its absolute peak. One stubborn enemy left. A plan for a short war, built on the certainty that the opponent is rotten and will fold at one blow. Warnings from the men who know the terrain, dismissed as weakness. An invasion in late June. Victories all summer that somehow never end the war. A supply line that dies at 500 kilometers. Mud, then cold, arriving exactly on schedule, as they had for centuries. And a collapse that begins in the first week of December. Break time equals 700 ms /. And here is the detail that turns the pattern from history into prophecy: it did not start with Napoleon. In 1708, Charles XII of Sweden, the military prodigy of his age, undefeated since taking the throne as a teenager, master of Northern Europe, marched his army into Russia to finish Tsar Peter in one short campaign. Peter's army retreated before him, burning crops and villages as it went, refusing the decisive battle for an entire year. The Swedish supply line stretched, then snapped. Then came the winter of 1708, the coldest Europe had seen in 500 years, a winter so savage that birds reportedly froze in flight. On a single terrible night, the Swedish army lost thousands of men to the cold. At Poltava, in the summer of 1709, what remained of the finest army in Europe was annihilated in 2 hours. Charles fled into exile in Ottoman territory. Sweden fell from the rank of great powers, and never returned to it. Every element is already there, a century before Napoleon was crowned, the invincible commander, the short war, the retreating enemy, the burned land, the snapped supply lines, the winter, the ruin. 3 men ran the same experiment, in 3 different centuries, with muskets, with cannon, with tanks. The result did not change once. 3 invincible commanders. 3 short wars. 1 trap, sprung 3 times in 230 years, each time on a man who knew all about the previous victim. Break time equals 700 ms/. So the answer to our final question, could either invasion have succeeded, is no. Not with those plans, against that space, on that arithmetic. The only winning move was the one no conqueror at the peak of his power has ever been able to make, not to go. And that is the real subject of this story. Not Russia. Not winter. The pattern lives inside the conqueror, not the country. Absolute power does not just corrupt. It isolates. It surrounds a man with mirrors until every voice he hears is his own, until warnings sound like treason and arithmetic sounds like cowardice. The stronger the empire, the quieter the word no, until the only thing left that can say no is reality itself. In 1812, reality said no in the snow at the Berezina. In 1941, it said no in the snow outside Moscow. Break time equals 700 ms/. Napoleon lost 500,000 men in Russia. Within 2 years, the empire he had spent his life building was gone, and he was a prisoner on an island. Hitler's Eastern War consumed his empire in 4, it ended with the Red Army, the army he had dismissed as a rotten structure, raising its flag over Berlin. The plains they marched across are quiet now. The rivers they crossed in the last week of June still flow past their unmarked crossing points. Nothing there remembers them. Break time equals 700 ms/. But the pattern remembers us. Somewhere, in every century, there is a power at its peak, certain that the old rules no longer apply, certain that this time is different, and the arithmetic waits, patient as land and weather, for the next man who refuses to hear the word no. When you see that certainty rising again, and you will, remember the 2 armies by the summer rivers. Remember the 5th of December. Break time equals 700 ms/.